Have you gotten to the end of the game and the Emperor is really giving you a round kick in the pants? Well, do I have some squads for you that are going to help you carry yourself to victory? My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel.
Unicorn Overlord.
Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, my coverage of Unicorn Overlord, build guides, discussions about the game, meta commentary, or just news about the gaming sphere in general, a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Today, we're doing another iteration of Steal These Squads, and because there seems to have been a little bit of confusion in the past, I just wanted to put it out there. Yes, the title is catchy, but I'm not telling you, like, just take these squads, alright? These are inspiration. It's a template. Something that I want to be able to give to you if you're struggling so you can build something based off of what you have, the building blocks that you have in your toolbox, with the inspiration from what I've done and know to be successful to find your own success. If you want to copy these squads verbatim, go for it. Absolutely. I'm not going to stop you. But you don't need to just use these either. Be creative. Figure out your own stuff. That's the idea. There's a reason that these squads aren't super hyper optimized. Not everything is forged. Not everyone is max level. There are inconsistencies. There's little things here and there that can be tweaked, improved. You could slave away over an Excel doc and crunch all the numbers and figure out, well, in this edge case, a Werefox would actually be better than a Rogue here, or over here it would be much better to have a Feather Shield instead of a Legionnaire. You could do that. Absolutely. I'm not saying that you can't, and I welcome you pointing it out in the comments, but the idea is that I know these work. These have battlefield experience, and especially by the end of the game, if people are struggling, I want to be able to show them what worked with battlefield experience. And if you don't believe me, I'll have some footage up throughout the video, but go watch the VODs, man. At the end of the last campaign, you'll see all of these squads doing work, I assure you. So, with that little preamble out of the way, what are the three squads that we are looking at here? Well, let's get into it, shall we? Two of them you're going to be quite familiar with. They are the final forms of two squads that we've been talking about throughout the course of this first run of Unicorn Overlord. And then one more is a curveball that we'll toss in at the end. To start, it's got to be the king himself. Not Alain, Bruno and his Braves. This squad has gone through many iterations, as you all should know. It was a burn squad for a very long time, then it focused for a little while on Bruno's raw damage output, and now we've wound up in a sort of support Bruno to AoE burst the entire enemy unit type of deal. And I gotta say, it's pretty damn good. It really solidifies for me that Berserker is actually a very solid class if you actually give it the chance to do what you want it to do. So, what is the goal here? Well, first of all, of course, we have Bruno himself, and he's decked out to the nines. He's got the King's Axe Draconash forged to give him +5 to all stats, as well as a whopping 25 physical attack. He has the Ancient Crown, giving him base passive point of +1 and all stats +5. He's got the Dream Crown, base AP of +1 and all stats +5. And then, of course, the Hero's Medallion, giving him 1 point of physical and magical defense, as well as, you guessed it, base AP and PP +1 and a whopping +20% to his physical attack. This pushes Bruno over 100 physical attack and makes him into an absolute legend. Now, there's going to be some of you who are like, yeah, of course, if you give someone a king's weapon and then 2 crowns and the hero's medallion, they're going to be really good. Yeah, obviously. But before you hit me with any of these, oh, well, the opportunity cost, whatever. The opportunity cost is making whatever unit you want, whatever class or character you want, into a godlike carry using these items. And I happen to choose to use Bruno for it. That's it. Now, the idea here is that Bruno is, over the course of a battle, going to build up his physical attack and then crush the enemy with a grand smash. To enable that, we have Mounting Charge, first action. Restores 30% HP to the user, grants the user plus 30% physical attack. And don't get me wrong, Bruno's fairly quick because of the initiative boosts from his items, but he's still not the fastest around, so there's a decent chance that he will have taken some damage prior to using Mounting Charge. Even if he does not, though, and we just basically don't get that HP, that's fine, because it's really that plus 30% to physical attack that we care about. Then we have Grand Smash. Attack all enemies, plus 50 potency if the user's at 100% HP. It hits, again, all enemies, ranged, ground-based, 100 physical potency, 80% hit rate. This crushes. This demolishes with the setup that we have, and I love it. And it's actually surprisingly easy to keep Bruno at max HP with the squad setup that we have. We do have Wide Smash set up as a finisher option if we have the AP left over and there's enemies still left standing after the Grand Smash, which does happen, especially if there's flyers. Berserk, if we happen to wind up being low on passive points to get some extra AP, survive a lethal blow. This does not happen often, but it's there if we need it. And then bulk up for healing to try and make sure that we do keep our HP topped off for Grand Smash. Supporting Bruno, we have Uriel the Feather Shield. This, you could probably use a Legionnaire or a Feather Shield, but I like to use a Feather Shield here because otherwise Bruno could be pretty susceptible to magic, so this is a nice thing to have, and it also keeps certain, like, special magic effects off of us. So, what do we have? Uriel's rocking the Zenoiran Knight's Sword, just a good defensive option, decent damage, good HP, physical, magical defense, everything that you want in a super tank like this. The Grand Barris Shield from the Divine Shard shop. 16 physical defense, 40% guard rate, plus 50% guard efficiency, and a debuff immunity. This is something that you're going to see a lot in this team because I do not want the members of this squad to get debuffed. I need them to be able to be functional and supporting Bruno so he can get that big critical hit Grand Smash in. We have a Knight's Medallion for even more defense and Cloth Gauntlet to make sure that our guard rate is over 100%. Uriel is a monster. Just these items alone and the raw tanking capability that they bring make him very, very strong. And you would think, well, Feather Shield's not exactly known for their physical defense. Like, it's okay, but their magical defense, that's where it's at. Look, though, man. 60 physical defense because of our items and everything, that ain't nothing to sneeze at. 72 magical defense is insane. 60 physical defense, I'll take it. It works. As far as our skills are concerned, row resistance. First action, if there are caster enemies present, grants allies in the user's row plus 50% magic defense, extends to all allies during the day. Worst case scenario, this gives Bruno a big boost to his magic defense, which is all I really needed to do. Best case scenario, it hits everybody. I'm okay with that. Mystic Shield, only if our own AP is 2 or more. So basically, if we didn't have the chance to use row resistance, we'll pop Mystic Shield to boost our own magic defense, gives us some more PP so we can guard for allies. And then Impulse, if there's nothing else to do, smack a single enemy, reduce their magic defense. It's not a huge deal. It can help with our Elven Fencer's damage, which we'll talk about shortly. But really, this is just here as an option to be able to get a slap in, weaken something. And I mean, listen, Feather Shields are not damage dealers, all right? But you can hit decently hard with this and potentially finish something off if needed. Then, of course, we have Reflect Magic. Reflect a magic attack. Enemy's passive skill set to activate before or after an attack will not activate. This is huge. I mean, this is going to save you some of the truly nasty magic attacks that are out there and make it so you don't even have to worry about being able to have row resistance up, whatever. As long as you have the passive points, you can turn that right back on the enemy and keep Bruno's HP in tip-top shape. Speaking of keeping HP up, that is where we have Sacrifice as well. Activates before an ally is attacked, risk one's life to cover an ally, grants the user +2 passive points. Have this set so that it's only if our own HP is 50% or higher. This way we can tank a lot of damage, but then, like, not leave ourselves in a critical state where we can suddenly sniped by something. This has worked out quite well thus far. You could probably turn this down to own HP is 25% or something along those lines, but like, I don't know. I like to play it safe. It's worked out well for me. I'm not keen to change it. Moving on to Andre the Rogue. This is just a utility piece here, as my rogues tend to be in any of my various different builds. He's got the Sylph's Bane for Sonic Blast, for anti-flyer shenanigans. Dancer's Bracelet for Powerful Call. This is the primary idea here, having another way to boost Bruno's damage, or the damage of the rest of the squad if we need someone to help clean up, like our Elven Fencer. The Large Aid Kit to be able to pop a party-wide heal at the end of the fight. This is the only major, like, non-self-healing that we have in the squad, so it is important to have something like this. And then the Sapphire Pendant to make sure that we have the passive points to engage with all of these different support shenanigans. As far as our skills are set up, Sonic Blast, again, being able to slap flying targets. It's not a ton of damage, but every little bit helps, especially since Grand Smash is not going to be hitting our flying targets. And Passive Steal we have, so we can just, drain passive points off the enemy, keep them from using their passive abilities, and make it so that we have even more ammo for our support. Party Aid is set to pretty much always activate at the end of a fight. Nice 20% HP to all allies is nothing to sneeze at. Powerful Call, only if our own passive points 3 or more. This way, it's much more likely that we'll have the passive points left over to activate Party Aid at the end of the fight, and it'll give us a couple of nice 30% physical boosts for our allies. Primarily, again, this is for Bruno, but Uriel and our Elven Fencer can both take advantage of it to a lesser extent. And then finally, Evade. Y'all pretty much always want to have Evade on your Thief. This way, if something like tries to poke Uriel and it would hit Andre, he can dodge as well. Nothing too crazy. Again, doesn't need to come up that often, but when it does, it's nice. Then, our most important piece of support here that isn't just an outright tank, Chantal the Druid. Chantal has been with Bruno through thick and thin. One could say that she's kind of the Selvi insert. You can imagine she's admiring Bruno's magnificent physique to this day, standing there in the back line. She has a very good view of it. And she's pretty much just set up to do all of the other support things that the other two can't. We've got glowing light in case there's something that's going to be blinding us, largely not elven archers, feather bows, but you know, it makes it so we get extra accuracy if there's flying enemies. That can help Bruno to finish them off. So I still leave it on here, even if we're not fighting angels at the moment. Fire Curse, so we can put some burn on some enemies, get some extra damage in here. This is a little bit of a contentious pick. I might wind up switching this one at some point if I feel the need, because by the time she uses it, a lot of the time enemies have used most of their actions, so it winds up actually not doing too much, but when the fire does proc, it is nice, so I haven't changed it just yet. And then Offensive Curse to reduce enemies' damage, make it, again, easier to keep Bruno's HP topped up, make sure Uriel isn't taking too much damage, all that good stuff. She is opening the fight with Cursed Swamp, reducing enemy initiative and evasion, as well as inflicting -1 passive points to cavalry targets. Really, that -30 evasion is huge. That's going to make it so much easier to land Grand Smash, and it's the reason that I like to have Cursed Swamp on here as opposed to some other start of battle ability. Because, man, like, you would think Berserkers don't have great accuracy, and Grand Smash only has 80% accuracy to begin with. With all the accuracy buffs and enemy evasion debuffs we've got in this squad, not a concern. Promise you. And then finally, we have Quick Curse. In case something does try to sneak through, deal some quick damage, we can counter that and basically nullify it altogether. As far as our items are concerned, we do have the Flame Hex Staff for Fire Curse, and then basic stuff, a Carnelian Pendant to have a little bit of extra AP, and then the Sapphire Pendant to make sure we can use Cursed Swamp and still have room for a couple quick curses in there. Finally, the Lamplight Ring, make it so we are immune to blindness, we heal a little bit, and we have access to that glowing light skill. Finally, Scotty, Elven Fencer. Really just here to have some cleanup damage, to spread damage around a little bit, make it so it's more easy to finish off enemies with Grand Smash, potentially be able to deal with some flyers a little bit more efficiently, things like that. Very basic setup here. She's got a Spell Steel Sword for some damage, Silk Hood for some damage. The key, the Flame Brand Tome, because if you didn't know, Grand Smash can be buffed with tomes. So just in case, by some act of God, there are enemies that survive the nuclear drop that is Bruno, he'll light them all on fire so that they're more likely to burn out before he even has to take another action. It's great. It's, again, never that necessary, but when you do need it, it is nice to have. So that is the only passive point ability we have on here. And then a Carnelian Pendant just to be able to throw out a little bit more damage. Basic stuff here for our attacks. Mirage Stab if there's a row. Nature's Wrath if there's a column. Lightning Blade to pick off individual targets, throw some stuns around, evade some attacks. Very standard Elven Fencer stuff, but cleans up more often than you might think. All told, I adore this squad. I love them to death. There's almost no challenge that I can throw them against that they can't surmount. It has been an absolute joy to use them, and I mean seriously, like you've been seeing some footage here of these guys at work as I've been talking about it. Watching Bruno come in with that Grand Slam, a Grand Smash, the United States of Smash, if you will, my All Might fans out there, it's a sight to behold, man. And the fact that it's not even a charge attack, he just goes. It is an absolute pleasure. It has been a joy having Bruno and the Braves here on the team for this run of Unicorn Overlord. I highly recommend that you try out a build like this for your endgame builds. It is a very good time. Moving on, we come to now King Alain's squad, the all-rounder squad that is built to be able to handle pretty much any situation and look good doing it. We have, of course, at the front, Alain himself. This is a pretty standard setup for Alain by the end of the game. He has his Holy Unicorn Blade, giving him +1 AP and PP, as well as debuff immunity, and 28 physical attack, making this arguably the single best weapon in the game. A Spell Steel Shield, actually, a little bit of an out there option, but I do like the little bit of extra magic defense from this. There's plenty of different shields that you can put on Alain, but he doesn't really need anything that fancy with everything else he's got going on, so he has the Spell Steel Shield. The Ring of the Unicorn, of course, giving another base AP +1 and +5 to all stats, as well as the Astral Blade skill that only works in the final boss fight, so like it doesn't really count. And then a Lapis Pendant to push our passive points to 4 as well. He's set up with Spinning Edge on a row with 2+ combatants. This, of course, you all should know what this does. 60 physical potency, 2 hit count, attack a row of enemies, ignore 50% of the target's defense, and grants the user +1 passive point if a target is defeated. Absolutely busted, disgusting skill. Then I've got Cavalry Slayer set up with a Cavalry condition, so we will only use this when there are cavalry present. It is a very nice anti-cav option. Don't need to go too much further into it than that. Lean Edge on the lowest HP enemy if our own HP is less than 50%, so that it doesn't get in the way of anything else. And then finally, in case there's some weird edge case where none of our other conditions come in, then Lean Edge to just slap whatever it is that we need to slap without any particular conditions set. Finally, we have Luminous Cover on the back row, so we can cover our allies in the back because Alain doesn't really need to worry about helping Berengaria, which we'll get to in a second. And then Noble Guard to cover ourselves to just get extra defense, get passive points. It's good stuff, right? Nothing wrong with that. This is, again, a very standard Alain build, but it's a very strong Alain build. And if at the very least you're looking for how you want to set up conditions on him, you can do that. Follow what I've got going on here. It'll be pretty decent for you. The one thing that I want to point out that we do not have is Rapid Order. Activates at the start of a battle, grants all allies plus 20 initiative, because we have a very different start of battle ability that I much prefer that we are using on Berengaria, who we will talk about next. Berengaria is my chosen marriage option in this run, and that is why she is paired here with Alain, because she's just awesome, and it just fits to have them both together. She is wielding the Knot of Ruin. There's plenty of different axes that Berengaria can use, but a lot of mine are already in use elsewhere, and this really does everything that I need it to for her. A solid 22 physical attack. Obviously, if this was forged, it would be better, but didn't have any Fevrite, so it's fine. Plus 1 base AP, which is the main reason I'm using it, and then minus 30 HP into 10 initiative, which doesn't really bother Berengaria that much. Her tankiness with her Great Shield means the lower HP is not that big of a deal, especially with cover from Alain and other healing and support that we have going on. And then the initiative, she still has 36 initiative. She's still plenty quick, and because of that ability from the start of the battle that we're going to talk about here, doesn't really matter anyway. We'll look at that first, since it's been mentioned a couple of times once we get to the end of our equipment here. She has a forged Azure Crest Great Shield to give maximum defensive stats and plus 1 base passive point. This is a great option for forging. The Ring of the Maiden, of course, giving Celestial Light, which, again, only works in final boss battle, but it's basically just a Lapis Pendant that gives all stats plus 5, which is pretty damn good. And then the whole Unicorn Signet is just here to give that debuff immunity because it's great and we love it. There's other options you can put here as well, but I like my frontliners not getting debuffed. Thank you very much. As far as our skills are concerned, we have Death Spin, targeting a row with 2+ combatants, much like her husband. Attack a row of enemies, inflict stun, extra potency versus afflicted targets, very standard stuff. Then we have Vicious Torment, which will only trigger on an enemy that is afflicted, partially due to the fact that it costs 2 AP to use. 75 physical potency, 2 hit count, attack a single enemy, plus 75 potency versus afflicted targets, and grants the user plus 1 passive point if the target is afflicted. Obviously, Berengaria really likes to play around with afflictions, so being able to have this to really crush something that's already afflicted is very nice. And then Carnage, just as a way to deal some damage and take some AP off of an enemy, always a solid option. Then, we have that Eye of the Warrior Princess that we mentioned before, activates at the start of a battle, inflicts attack minus 20% and initiative minus 10 on all enemies, so I don't really mind losing the 10 initiative for Berengaria because she's also taking 10 off of everyone else, so it kind of balances out. And just reducing all enemy attack by 20% is really solid for a squad like this that likes to be a little bit defensive and then heal up. It's a nice balance. Then, of course, we have Painbringer, activates after or before being attacked, grants the user plus 1 AP, 20% attack, and plus 10 initiative. This can stack. Frontline Berengaria wants to be able to get her stats up, so there you go. Painbringer, easy choice. Finally, Sanguine Pursuit, follow-up attack, lets you drain HP equal to the damage dealt, or 50% of the damage dealt. Grants the user plus 1 passive point versus afflicted targets. This is a no-brainer. And it's another part of the reason that I don't mind her HP being lower, because she's going to be Sanguine Pursuiting so frequently. She's going to be getting HP back constantly just from her own attacks, so it works out quite well. Again, pretty standard Berengaria build, but her and Alain together is just a crushing combination, and then with the backline support that we have set up, it's even better. Speaking of which, we have Ives, another support rogue with the Sacral Sword. This is just a solid piece. Again, affliction immunity, max damage, heal own HP when using active skills. It's a good way to make sure that your rogue is actually able to deal some damage. Immune to afflictions is always good. It's kind of a running theme in this squad. And then being able to heal up just from attacking, not having to worry about anyone else healing them, is very, very nice. We then have a first aid kit for a little bit of backup healing if we wind up needing it. Not usually necessary, but it's very useful when you do. And then a ruby pendant and a lapis pendant to get our boosts to AP and PP. It's pretty much all Rogue needs, honestly, and it's worked out quite well for us thus far. Passive steal we have set up to only use if our own AP is 4 or more. Basically, so it'll be the first action that we use, but also if other trickery happens with AP restoration, then we could still wind up using it again if we wanted to. Just drain passive points off of an enemy and then spend the rest of the fight tossing Toxic Throw at the backline and just afflicting everything, poisoning everything, draining HP, giving afflictions for Berengaria to hit and get bonuses off of. It's a good time. Again, we have that first aid targeting the lowest HP ally at the end of a fight, just get a little bit of a top off, and then of course evade. Thieves always want evade, and it's why we have him behind Berengaria, because he can evade any attacks that pierce through her. Then we have our Sainted Knight, and I mean, I love Sainted Knights. Sainted Knights are great. It's a shame we only had one in this run, but she has done so much work. Really, she has a very basic build, not even like a super optimized build, which, again, I said at the top of the video, these are not meant to be hyper-optimized builds or anything. I just have her rocking a greatsword so that she can deal extra damage off of Saint's Blade, which we'll talk about in a minute. She doesn't need anything fancier than that. She's not really an attacker, but this way she can deal some damage when I need her to. Then she has the Templar's Shield, so she has extra guard efficiency, extra HP recovery, a good defensive option. Lapis Pendant to get an extra point of passive points, and a Sage's Hood to boost her magic effects, like her healing a bit more. Very simple, very effective. Sainted Knights are just so good on their own. They don't need a bunch of fancy equipment to get going here. Speaking of which, Saint's Blade, 50 physical potency, 2 hit count, 100% hit rate, attack a single enemy, plus 25 potency if the user is at 100% HP, which she often will be. It's pretty easy to make that happen, and grants the user plus 1 passive point if the attack hits. This is just a great option, man. Like, it's so good. I'm only using it if we do have 2 or more AP, so we'll use it on the first attack, and then that's it, and that'll leave us with 1 AP left for row heal. But it's a good way to just get an extra passive point in there so we can pop more row barriers, holy guards, magic barriers, and that's the main reason we have this knight in the squad. We don't need her dealing damage. We've got 3 other major damage dealers that you've got it handled. She just wants to be able to heal and support as much as possible, and this allows her to do just that. Then row heal just targets the row with the least HP. It's probably going to be the front line most of the time. Row barrier negating the next magic attack to a row of allies. Also negates afflictions. Very nice. Don't need to worry about the afflictions, but the magic damage can be a little nasty for Alain and Berengaria, or potentially the backline if they happen to get targeted. So very solid option. No notes about that. Really good. Holy Guard, blocking an enemy attack with a medium guard, prevents debuffs. Hell yeah. Again, anti-debuffs, phenomenal in this squad. Very much like it. And being able to reduce the damage our healer takes is huge. And then finally, if it comes down to it, Magic Barrier. If we happen to just have like 1 AP left, we can still prevent a magical attack from hitting one of our allies. Finally, we have Alexandra, the Wyvern Master. This is a little bit of a loose end for this squad. This is a Dragoon Dive build that does work quite well. It just often winds up not being needed because of how good Alain and Berengaria are at clearing enemies. But then every time I think, like, oh, maybe I should switch this up, then the very next battle, like, they somehow don't manage to clear everything, and then Alexandra comes in with the Dragoon Dive and finishes everything off, so I've left it. That does mean, of course, we are rocking the Dragoon's War Spear. Gives plus 15 max HP, plus 5 initiative, and the Dragoon Dive ability. It is forged, so it has max physical attack. Then we have the Pursuance Bracelet, so we can use our passive points a little bit more efficiently to pursue enemies alongside Berengaria and try and finish things off that might have only gotten weakened. Our Carnelian Pendant, so that we can both Dragoon Dive and Diving Thrust, and then an Elite Beret to just deal some extra damage. The creme de la creme of this whole build is, of course, Dragoon Dive, 100 physical potency, 2 AP, 1 hit count, and 100% hit rate. This is a charge attack. Attacks all enemies, has 50 extra potency versus ground-based targets, and of course you can't evade or use passive skills while charging. Again, this is a very solid option. We will start charging it fairly early on in the fight. Can come in near the end to finish off anything that hasn't already been killed. It's a good finisher. It really is. You could potentially do some other stuff with a Wyvern in this squad, but I've been quite happy with this setup. Diving Thrust is there just so if we, again, use Dragoon Dive and there's still something left, we can use our last AP for something. Deal some good damage, attack single enemy, extra damage against cavalry, which is more likely than not going to be the type of thing that might survive this whole onslaught. So it's just a good cleanup option. And then, of course, Pursuit and Ground Counter to use our passive points effectively, whether we are following up an ally or pushing back against something that attacked us and getting more chip damage in there. This is the ultimate culmination of the all-rounder squad. You guys have seen the evolution of my Alain squad throughout this whole run, so I wanted to show off its culmination here, and I love it. I can throw these guys against pretty much anything. Shouldn't really be too much of a surprise, seeing as how we do have Alain and Berengaria together, and those are 2 of the strongest characters in the game. But even they can get overwhelmed if you don't have good support for them, and this squad is very, very good at supporting them. Highly recommend a setup like this if you're having a hard time figuring out what you want to do with Alain, or you just need a really solid A-team all-rounder squad to help you finish off the game. I highly recommend it. Finally, that curveball that I mentioned a little bit earlier we're going to talk about is this squad with Josette. This is a kind of like dodge tank strike team that I can send into dangerous areas due to the fact that they have a flying commander, and is surprisingly resilient despite the fact that they're all rather squishy other than our fighter. So we'll go through it here from left to right, starting with Encarna the Werefox. Her whole job is to blind things. And remember, this is a dodge tank build, so being able to blind enemies, great. Being able to have more evasion, also great. A Werefox allows us to do both of those. She's using the Corroded Spear to get the Shadow Thrust ability, which is exactly what I want on her. She has an Amethyst Pendant to get an extra active and passive point. A Mistletoe Charm to prevent her guard or passive points from being sealed, as well as granting her extra evasion, which is very important. And then a Royal Scarf also to pump her evasion even harder. It is incredibly difficult to hit this Werefox even during the day. She is a mainstay on this team. I've been extremely happy with her performance because she just dodges everything. And anything that she's likely to not dodge, typically our Vanguard in the back there has her covered on. She has two different iterations of Shadow Thrust here. First is the highest initiative full column in the enemy team, which at this point in the game, there's pretty much always going to be at least one full column that you can poke right at the very beginning of the fight, blind them, deal some good damage, and make sure that you have even more technical evasion set up and ready to go. And then just in case there's not like a full column or something like that, I just have another iteration of it so she can just go poke something. Then we have Weakness Hunter. Activates after an enemy is debuffed. Attack a single enemy. Ignores 50% of the target's defense. I mean, there's going to be debuffs flying on this team, as you'll see, so having an ability that lets us just get in there, deal a bunch of extra damage, it's unguardable, it ignores a good chunk of defense, that's really, really nice. I really like having this as an extra damage option, which is something that this squad can struggle with, depending on what it is that they're fighting. That is their primary weakness, but I don't mind them kind of being an attrition squad either, so. Then we do have Shadow Pursuit. Activates after an ally attacks. Follow-up, attack a single enemy and inflicts blindness. Again, a good way to be able to inflict more blind without necessarily needing active points. Always appreciated. And then Nocturnal Evade gives us a dodge, gives us the ability to get passive points back at night. It's great. I love Werefoxes. Moving on to Squad Leader Josette, the Griffin Master. She is going to be one of our primary damage dealers. There's a couple different methods here, but she's definitely going to be one of the major ones. Her job is to evade things on the front line and then deal big AoE damage. To that aim, she has the Vorpal Axe, giving her extra max HP and initiative as well as good physical attack. She then has the Elite Beret to give her a boost to her physical attack once again, Sapphire Pendant, and a Carnelian Pendant so that she's set up and good to go for her passive and active points. She then has Aerial Smite, prioritizing the back row, attack a row of enemies for 150 physical potency, 2 AP. Cavalry targets cannot guard against this attack, and it grants the user -1 AP if a target is at 100% HP. The nice thing here, if we look at our other members of the squad really quick, Josette is actually the second slowest member of the squad, only beating Olaf the Vanguard. This means that there's actually a decent chance that there won't be any enemies in the backline that are at full HP before she comes in with the Aerial Smite. So there is actually a reasonable assumption to be made that we won't be losing that AP there, which is really nice, because Aerial Smite is a disgustingly strong skill. And while I'm not leaning into it as like a super nuke clear like you can do some combo builds with, it's still just a really nice piece to have to be able to deal a lot of damage to the enemy very quickly and very efficiently. Then, of course, if that goes wrong, or we just happen to have 1 AP left, we do have High Swing, so we can just chunk through another row of allies. Nothing crazy here. Very standard Griffin Master stuff, but it works very well with this squad. We then have Griffin Glide, allowing us to, again, evade another attack, this time a ranged attack, and grants us an extra AP, so we could potentially even get 2 Aerial Smites in, depending on how the dice roll. And then Wing Rest, if we wind up having the passive points at the end of the fight, being able to heal up a little bit is very nice. Baldur, our Elven Fencer, is up next, and he has, again, a fairly standard build. You can tell this is a squad that I put together kind of out of the scraps of other things that I had available based on just the classes I had to use due to viewer submissions and what I had already equipped some of my hard-hitting squads with. But that's why I wanted to show it, because it actually did turn out like pretty damn nice, and I'm glad that it did so that you guys can see an unorthodox build that you might be able to put together or take inspiration from. So, Baldur has a basic Spell Steel Sword just to give him a good balance of physical and magical attack. A Raven Plume to push his initiative much higher than our Griffin Masters, which again, to lean into the whole Aerial Smite thing is something that I wanted. That was very important. A Royal Scarf to make him dodgier, and then a Lapis Pendant to make him have more passive points, which also means more dodges. Our abilities then are Mirage Stab, targeting a row with 2+ combatants, dealing good damage, granting us the ability to evade 1 attack. It is 2 AP, so this will use all of our AP at the start of the fight, but, I mean, the good damage and the guaranteed dodge, like, I can't really argue with that. That's pretty good. Then if something does go awry and we wind up with a leftover AP, we do have, of course, Lightning Blade, targeting the highest HP ally, putting a stun on them, hopefully making them a little bit easier to clean up for the rest of the squad. We then have Evasive Impetus, activates after evading an attack, grants the user +1 AP. Obviously, this synergizes very well with Mirage Stab. In most cases, it will mean that we will have the chance to guaranteed get another Lightning Blade in there, which is awesome. We have Remove Weakness, so that if someone gets debuffed, we can then remove it and grants them a buff to evade an attack, which again, dodging attacks is the name of the game here. And then Sylphic Barrier activates for an ally is hit by a ranged physical attack. This is a good way to help cover our Griffin Master and our Werefox in case something happens with our Vanguard and he's not able to cover for them in its entirety. Good backup option, very much appreciated, and I do like Elven Fencer in this setup. Speaking of our Vanguard, let's go look at Olaf here. He's set up with a pretty standard defensive Vanguard build, but again, it works great here. He has the Sanguine Blade Plus, allowing him to get the Sanguine attack and to deal much more damage when he's using it. This is just here so that he can heal up if he winds up taking some hits early on in the fight and he needs to get some HP quickly. The Blue Rose Shield, giving him Royal Guard, which is a very nice guard effect. Gives him an extra passive point as well, which is awesome. First Aid Kit, so we can get some healing triggered on our Elven Archers, so that we can do the whole, triggering selfless heal the whole party thing. We'll talk about that in a second. And then Cloth Gauntlets to push our guard rate pretty dang high. Not 100%, but very, very good, and more likely than not, you'll be guarding any given attack. Then, of course, we do have the Sanguine attack set up to only activate if our own HP is less than 50%. Again, I would prefer that he be using Defender to get himself some more passive points and boost his own physical defense. This is just here as an emergency option. Our primary goal to use is, of course, Defender. Attack a single enemy, hit count 2 AP, 75 physical potency per hit, grants the user plus 50% physical defense, and grants the user +1 passive point if the attack hits. More passive points, that means more guarding, and that's the exact reason we have a Vanguard in the squad. Royal Guard, as we mentioned, is just very nice. Block an attack with a medium guard. User recovers 25% HP. Solid. Love it. Arrow Cover is going to protect our Flyer and our Werefox, and potentially our Elven Fencer as well, from any mischievous ranged attacks that decide to come in. And boy, there are more of them than you would expect, especially once Flyers get involved, so this is able to absorb some pretty nasty damage from those types of hits. And then we have First Aid at the end of the fight to be able to target our Elven Archer, Sarga. Speaking of Sarga, she's the final piece in this puzzle, and she's definitely the most complicated one if you look at her tactics, but it's actually not as bad as it looks. She has the Interrogator's Bow Plus, giving her Healing Hunter, as well as base passive points +1 and magic defense +3. Healing Hunter is very, very nice. It's going to be a good option for picking off pesky clerics who might otherwise put a thorn in this team's side, especially when you're considering, not wanting to hit 100% HP allies with our Griffins so she doesn't lose AP. This is a good way to help with that. Then we have the Sage's Hood to make our healing and our magic damage such that it is a little bit better. Scarlet's Ribbon so that we can have the quick heal if we need it for emergency situations, and a Sorcerer's Medallion to again buff our magic attack. Our primary tactics go as follows. Icicle Arrow. Attack 2 enemies, inflicts freeze. I have it set to prioritize flying, otherwise I just kind of let her rip and see what happens. A very solid attack. I like being able to just put freeze on some things. Really can throw a wrench in the enemy's plan. Then, of course, we have Mystic Conferral if we wind up getting extra AP, not using Icicle Arrow, whatever. Being able to add magic damage to an ally's attack. And Wind Arrow if we need to just pick off something that has decent evasion, or we only have 1 AP and want to be able to hit a flyer or something like that. Basic stuff. We then have Pure Field as our start of battle ability. It grants all allies a buff that negates a single debuff. There's nothing quite like a rough debuff to get in the way of your evade team. It really sucks to be hit by burn or poison or something, and watches, even though they're not taking any hits, they're still just having their life force drained away over the course of the fight. It's really awful, so this can really help to prevent that. I love this ability, very, very strong. Then the aforementioned Healing Hunter, being able to just pick off enemy clerics and other types of healers. It's great. Quick Heal as an emergency heal for an ally if we wind up needing it in the middle of the fight. Selfless Heal, so we can restore minor HP to all allies and remove all debuffs. Typically, this is going to be activating at the end of the battle when we get targeted by the First Aid Kit from Olaf. And it's nice to be able to just give everyone a little bit of a pick-me-up. And then, again, at the end of the fight, really not worried about removing debuffs. But still, just that extra healing at the end of the fight can keep these guys going for a good long while. And then just another extra quick cure just in case we, wind up with nothing else to do with our passive points and just want to toss a debuff at an ally. Cool. Great. Doesn't come up very often because of all the debuff immunity and everything that we have, but it's there for when we need it. I really enjoy this squad. They're underleveled because they didn't get as many kills in the final battle as some of our other squads, but really they actually are much more effective than I would have expected. Just being able to get in, take out priority targets, not take much damage in the process due to their evasion, deal a good amount of damage, and get out. It's very much appreciated. And the fact that they do have a decent amount of support in the backline from the Elven Archer and the Vanguard means that they're surprisingly difficult to take down, even for things with like 100% hit True Strike attacks, which is great. And those are 3 of my recommended squads that you steal for the end game of Unicorn Overlord. I absolutely adore all 3 of these squads. I love most of my endgame squads. I'll probably do a second video talking about more of them because there is a lot to discuss with all of these different builds. But the 3 that I showed off today are definitely 3 of the ones that are dearest to me and closest to my heart because they've just done so much work for us. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the video, this is not a you should copy these builds verbatim type of thing. Like, take the idea, maybe start using the squad and then build from it, or take pieces of it and slot it in to squads that you already have to make something for yourself. Or if you want to take one of these squads and then really fine-tune it, slave away over an Excel doc, crunch all the numbers, min-max everything, get everything forged, all the stats maxed out, ground up to the 9s, go for it, man. Enjoy yourself. Absolutely. I would love to see the finished iterations of some of these builds. Do you need to do that? Absolutely not. But if you want to, by all means, go for it. These are very solid foundations to build off of. That said, I'm going to wrap this one up here. Thank you all so much for watching. I do very much appreciate it. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.